You know, you have said that this may be really the finest album of your career. Considering the highlights of your career recordings, what makes this album special?
This album was actually 3 years in the making. I just was determined to get it right. You know, there's a sharper focus the longer I do this. I'm just going, this is my life and my work before God. And I'm not making a record just to have a fresh piece of product to sell. I'm not interested in that. I was just saying in my heart, I'm going to get it right. I am not going to do a record until I'm sure I have the body of work that says what I want to say.
Now, you chose Rick Elias for this project, and it seemed like a real good pairing between the two of you. Why don't you tell us about that?
Out of all the producer options out there, Rick was the guy. He was the one that sort of percolated to the surface, and I thought, this guy is just cool. He doesn't even try to be cool. He's just so cool. And he plays great guitar, so he understands the fabric, you know, from which I write and what I do as a performer. And I just knew that we could get in to the studio together and create something that would be rocking and compelling and cool.
And you had some great players on this album, too.
The wonderful Jerry McPherson, who played everything from banjo to sitar and many, many guitars in between. Phil Madera, who played keyboards and heaven knows what all else. My old friend Tom Howard, who did great string arrangements and played lots of the acoustic piano. A great group of guys that really bless me, excite me on a musical way.
And there was another musician that showed up on your new release that sort of created a special musical moment for you, didn't it?
The favorite musical moment for me was the appearance of Stuart Adamson, who was the founder and guitar player for Big Country, a band from the 80s. And it was really interesting how this came about, because I'd mentioned in passing to Rick what I wanted to see happen with this one song. And I was saying, you know, like, so stylistically, the guitar thing on this, it's got to be that Celtic kind of rock and roll bagpipe, you know, ringing from the mountaintop sort of sound, you know, a la Big Country. And Rick got this funny smile on his face, and he said, "Oh, I know that guy. I just had dinner with him." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, Stuart Adamson, who is Big Country. He lives in town now, and he's a really nice guy, and I think if he likes your song, he'll be happy to come by and play on it." And by golly, he did.
You know, Randy, we're going to go ahead and play the song Hand of God here in just a moment. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about it?
I think God uses everything in our lives to keep narrowing in our focus until we finally see that He's the center, you know, until finally He's all we can see on the horizon. And so I look at my own life and I can say I see the hand of God everywhere, from the blessings, you know, to even the more precious blessing of sensing His presence and His intervention in difficult situations.
Randy, your new video, Fire, has a dark, surreal quality to it. Fire is, personified in the song as well as depicted on the album cover. Who or what is this fire, and what message are you trying to get across to your listeners?
I think of images from the Bible, the Lord appearing to Moses, you know, in the burning bush, or the day of Pentecost when the Spirit of God, you know, manifested Himself as tongues of fire above the people's heads. And I mean, we serve a holy, awesome God, you know, the Alpha and the Omega, the one who dwells in holy, unapproachable light. And the story behind this song is that it actually came to me as I was going to sleep. It came to me almost in a dream, like a prayer rising up from my subconscious. And the second part of the song came to me much the same way. I was actually in Singapore. I just flown over for some concerts. I woke up at 5 in the morning, and these lyrics were these real powerful images going through my head, and I just sat up and I had to write them down.
Randy has a song in his new release, Thirst, called Lonely House. It's beautiful, and it's melancholy, and it seems to offer little hope, but we're interested in what you want to say about that song.
Lonely House is the portrait of a marriage, and it does come from an honest place. They say write about what you know, you know? It does come from an honest place in my own experience, at times in my own marriage. What's interesting to me is that everyone I've played this song for seems to really strongly identify with it.
Randy, you have another very interesting song on your new album, Thirst. It's called Baby Hates Clowns. What do you think your listeners are going to get from that song?
You know, I just believe that it's the songwriter's job and privilege to write about all of life. You know, the beauty and the pain and the mystery, as well as some of the silly, aggravating stuff. And I just sort of couldn't help it. I just had to write this song.
Contrasting the pragmatic and deep philosophical side of Randy Stonehill, you know, there's this light-hearted, sort of humorous side. How does humor play a role in what you do?
I think humor is a healing gift from God. I think it's a reminder that He's built into us that we can't take ourselves, we shouldn't take ourselves too seriously. You know, it's born out of the friction and the tension of the unexpected. If anybody experiences that every day, it's human beings. And I just feel like once you realize that God is exactly who He claimed to be, you can never, you know, buy your own publicity again, so to speak, that you are the center of the universe and, you know, this is all very weighty and serious. There's a freed up, childlike celebration, you know, element that wells up from inside you. And I've utilized that in concert a good deal. It's one of my ways of building bridges with the audience, of saying without using the words, just because I'm up here on stage in this spotlight does not mean that I think I'm larger than life, I'm all important, I take myself too seriously. I take God seriously. And then I'm embracing the adventure and the mystery of it all, just like you are. I've also found that if I'm entertaining myself, you know, if I can make myself crack up, that's usually infectious, and the audience is laughing too.
Now, we understand you're dedicating this recording to Compassion International. Randy, why is Compassion so important to you? And how long have you been a sponsor of Compassion International? And doesn't the song Sleeping also tie in with that? Maybe you can talk about that some also.
I've been a spokesman for Compassion International for almost 15 years. I love these people, and that's because they love what God cares about most, which is sharing mercy. That's what the cross was about. The song Sleeping, I really hungered for a fresh approach to this subject, and just something that will go deeper, maybe even somehow take people by surprise, you know. We all need fresh challenges. And when I look at my involvement with Compassion International, when I look at a hurting world, I realize that, you know, people aren't necessarily cruel on purpose. We don't necessarily turn a blind eye to poverty and suffering, you know, just because, you know, we're creepy or something. It's that it just becomes easier to sort of get distracted, caught up in our own agendas, to allow ourselves to be lulled into this kind of half sleep of denial where we can all just imagine that it'll somehow all go away. And so I wrote the song Sleeping really as much to challenge my own heart as anybody else's.